Welcome and thank you for listening to our presentation on expanding your PR presence using PR and comms. Our promise to you is that this presentation will deliver strategic advice and practical takeaways which will deliver value back to your business. There are three sections to this presentation. The first, the challenges of doing PR in Europe. The second, the common pitfalls. And the third, the 5 questions to ask yourself when planning a pan-European PR strategy. So without further ado, I'll kick this off. In this first section, we will cover the particular challenges of doing PR in Europe. There are 51 countries in Europe, that's over 50 different cultures to contend with, and you must be careful of the regions too. Take the UK for example, there are 4 countries with one common language, whereas in the Nordics, who often get bundled together, there are 5 countries with 5 different languages. Always address each individual country. There are also 23 languages, which goes far beyond just the words you choose. So when you're writing copy for a European audience, it's important to consider idioms, cultural references, and even spellings. Brits instantly notice the Zs in words like organisation and realise and know it's not been written for them. Certain countries react to different styles too. For example, in Germany, companies should avoid superlatives such as bigger, best, highest, as this jars when you're speaking to a German audience. Germans tend to play down the exaggerations and instead want an enormous amount of detail based on facts, figures, and anything that will substantiate people's claims. Market maturity will be different in every market. Not only can competitor market share be different in each country, companies with local founders and CEOs will automatically be favoured. Especially when you're an outsider coming in, you need to know where people's loyalties lie. Regulations and legislations are important to consider too. For example, for one of our clients, we ran a campaign around flexible working maturity in Europe, and not only did we consider the local attitudes, we had to be aware of the regulation in our storytelling. The point is, one size does not fit all. PR must work with the sales team. In the B2B arena, that means understanding where PR influences large corporates and SMEs, which vertical sectors you want to target, and who exactly you're targeting at that organization in terms of their level of seniority, because that often is different in Europe. For B2C products, it's important to understand that particular pain points will likely be different in each region. For example, privacy and security is increasingly important for Germans. French are less worried about this, but value their personal time highly, whilst in Britain, citizens are much more relaxed about privacy and private time. How does this impact your message? Firstly, listen and adapt. Things always change. What are your competitors doing? What is the current mood? What needs to be dialed up and what needs to be dialed down? Secondly, consider different formats. The French tend to love their images and still feature a lot of infographics, whereas Germans love their numbers and statistics, and the Brits love a good soundbite. So always think about what format's best in that country. Thirdly, reputation maturity. Reputation brilliance in one country doesn't passport across. In one market, you may need to differentiate yourself, whilst in another, it might be more about educating the market. We have covered the challenges, but what are the common pitfalls of pan-European PR? We've established that Europe cannot be seen as one entity, but as individual countries. With a limited budget, it can be tempting to just use news wires to cover Tier 2 markets, which may be a tactic that works well in the US, but it isn't as effective in different parts of Europe. It's much better focusing on building relationships which are solid and longer lasting. Don't turn PR on and off either, because you lose momentum, and when you start again, you start from zero. Scaling budgets up and down works, as you always have someone with their eye on opportunities for you at all times. Don't just pay to push out content either, be active in the market and engage. Finally, a limited budget means focusing and prioritizing. That's not only by country, but also by type of content. It's much easier to adapt and translate an infographic than a video, for example. And media alerts are much quicker to translate and can have just as much impact as a press release or a weighty and time-consuming press kit. Firstly, don't bundle budgets and avoid the switch on and switch off approach. It's better to commit to a monthly fee and bank hours during quiet periods. When you commit to an agency, they'll be there for you. Secondly, don't bundle regions. The Nordics are 5 separate countries, which is 5 separate languages and 5 different media landscapes. Also, as good as everyone is at understanding English, don't fall into the trap of just communicating in English. Make the effort to translate. Thirdly, don't bundle results. Success is different in every country, so don't play countries off against each other. Set KPIs for each country and avoid the temptation to compare. Translation can be quick, but localization takes longer. Companies must factor this in when they want to simultaneously release news in an impactful way. Time zones are also a huge factor to consider. 9 a.m. US East Coast is 3 p.m. in Europe. A way to get around this would be to pre-brief the media under embargo and prepare social updates ready for a 3 p.m. release. The media is used to this and would rather have this than receive the announcement the following day. Bank holidays are different in every region. In the UK, they fall on a Friday or a Monday. In France, they can fall on any day. And if that means it's a Tuesday or a Thursday, many French workers will faire le pont, which translates to make the bridge, in which case it rules out the Monday or the Friday for important announcements. In the German region of Bavaria, they also get an extra 4 days bank holiday. Lucky them. Religion and festivities are another important consideration. France is 85% Roman Catholic, but Christmas is less important than it is in the UK. In England, most workers take time off between Christmas and New Year. When it comes to the summer months, France, Italy, and the Nordics have extended summer breaks, and most take July and August as annual leave. Don't assume all tactics work the same. Even a simple tactic like a press release is different in its form across Europe. German releases tend to be longer, more detailed, more academic, whilst French releases have more storytelling, weaving in quotes into the bigger story. And the distribution of the releases differ too. If based on a report, for example, a great way to do this in the UK is to chop it into smaller stories. But in France, journalists like to see the full report, and you may want to consider exclusives. And whilst I'm talking about research and studies, it's really important to remember that costs will vary hugely in Europe. In the UK, it's very cost effective, but in France, it's about 5 times the cost. Social media maturity and take up is different in Europe. For example, in the UK, there's LinkedIn, whilst in Germany, you need to also consider Xing. But that's about being an active member on those sites, not just having a presence and broadcasting. Press conferences are obsolete and don't work anywhere. Be wary of events in countries, especially in countries like Germany, where the media is scattered across multiple cities. It's much better to build one-on-one relationships through phone and face-to-face time. The media has become so time poor that really only personalized approaches work. Making the effort to write and speak in local language goes a long way. It's especially important when you are an international brand, as people will naturally favour a local player over you. In this case, it's more important to highlight understanding the particularities of a country as well as what you can add to the mix, without necessarily going head to head with that local competitor. When it comes to corporate news, our recipe for success for an announcement is for it to be 2 parts corporate, 1 part local. This third section covers the building blocks for local success. Do you know what your business goals are in Europe? Ask yourself, what is your commitment in Europe and specifically in each country? Think in terms of revenue targets, investments. Do you have a clear idea of what success looks like? What is your strategy for growth? Will you be selling direct or through distributors? Be mindful of your brand, especially if it's through distributors. If you can sell direct, it's better because you have more control of your brand. Also ask yourself, what are you creating and building in the market? Is it new or are you stealing market share? If the latter, do you have a steer of how you want to benchmark yourself against competitors? Do you know which countries are a priority for you? The size of the market is one thing, the market potential is something completely different. Are you gunning for 5% of a big market or 50% of a market with huge potential? Once you know your target market share, you can determine your share of voice. It's better to do 3 countries well than 10 badly. What I mean by well is constantly and consistently engaging in the right channels and actively participating in local language. It's not about broadcasting your views. You may not have an office and you may not have an on the ground team, but you do need local language experts who have the knowledge and expertise. If that country is important to you, you must present yourself as local. Do you understand the media landscape in your region? Determine your target audience and work out where you can influence them. Remember that people don't use social networks in exactly the same way in each country. There are also local networks to tap into, so it's best getting local advice. Population size also impacts the number of publications and the readership in that region. The important thing here is not to compare like for like and to focus on the impact you're trying to achieve. It's better to measure influence of a publication rather than the number of readers. So, for example, an HR title in Sweden may only reach a few thousand readers, which may seem small to a British marketer, but if it's 70% of all Swedish people in HR, then that's your target audience and that's the right publication to have on your side. It's about quality over quantity. So, how do you ensure investment and expectations are aligned? Firstly, you need to consider the presence in that country. You can't expect a huge profile without a PR team on the ground, especially at launch stage. It's also not just about monetary investment, it's about time investment. Your local PR spokesperson needs to be engaged and available. We work with large global brands with no physical presence in France, but the way they make it work is by feeding native speakers with regular local knowledge through daily media alerts. And with good on the ground communication, you may also need to invest in tools that enable collaboration. You must give non English speakers the time to express their views in written form. Lastly, know what success looks like before you start and adjust your expectations from there. Do you have the right partners? From a marketing perspective, do you have the right partners to really equip and support your sales teams locally? And do these partners work well with each other? An integrated approach between all marketing disciplines has a much bigger impact. There are also cost and resource gains of connecting partners across regions, but remember, one size does not fit all, and sometimes you must invest more in one country over another in order to see success. In summary, think country, not region. Don't spread yourself too thinly, and don't be tempted to bundle. Treat countries individually, local language, local approach, and local examples, but have a consistent strategy for your approach in Europe. Also, tap into local people for expertise and knowledge and find the right partners for you. Thank you for listening, and do get in touch if you'd like our support with your pan-European PR plans.